I've gotten so many comments from the last one and the most recent roster update on, like the day after the roster update when I make millions of stubs or however much I make. Can you give us your early roster update investments? I've gotten that so many times, and there's an issue with that. It's that it's so freaking early that I'm not going to recommend players to you this early because it's just way too early to tell if someone's really going diamond. But I'm going to meet you guys in the middle in this video, and I'm going to basically just walk you through my entire process of roster update investments because I feel like now is a perfect time because now is when I typically invest when guys are all, down in price in your quick sell. So let's get into it. So the first thing that I want to mention is you can invest in diamonds. Obviously, they changed the quick sell values for all live series cards really in MLB 22, which made it possible, and it made you so many more stubs in investments really because all golds were 1500, all silvers were like I don't even remember, like 100, all diamonds were 5000, I'm pretty sure. And so you can make a lot more stubs now with investments. But there's one thing that I haven't really ever invested in diamonds. It's just much more difficult because you're risking so many stubs, and risk is something I'm going to go into later when I bring up my Excel sheet, which I'm going to show you guys, which is really, really cool, and I'm going to break down. But like, there's so much risk when you invest in diamonds because if like, let's say you want to invest in Acuna, who is tearing the ball ever since he came back. You have to buy 34,000 just for one Acuna. And then what happens, I'm not saying I want this to happen or I'm predicting this, but like, let's say, God forbid, he gets injured and then he's out for the year again, which would be a travesty. All your stubs are screwed. There's just a lot of risk. Like, the risk to reward, in my opinion, is not worth it for diamonds. Sure, you could have an example of getting like a Tatis when he was like 60K and then he went up to a 90 and now he's a lot. You can make stubs, but it's just not really worth it in my opinion. I also 90% of the time only do like golds. I don't really ever do silvers. There's just too much volatility. Like, if you're going to invest in a guy that's a silver, I would only invest in a guy if it's like for the fielding update or something like that, or if it's just like so obviously a good investment that I just have to do it. Because these guys that are silvers, sure, you could make stubs off of, but they're already so inflated. And like, let's say for like Lawrence Butler, he's been doing great in real life. Let's say I invested in him. That quick sell value is above the value of an 81. Let's say he goes to an 81 and then he's, back to the mean. It's just like, I didn't really get anything out of that. If you're investing in guys that are 82, 83 and they make diamond or they get close to diamond, then they still have value. But most of the players that are silver aren't ever going to make diamond. So I always just typically wait until they get to gold, unless it's just unless it's just an insanely obvious guy who's just been insane and shouldn't be a silver. So now let me talk about what I do for investments. I do pretty much all the time gold cards. What I like to do, and I'm going to break all of these, things down in my Excel model, but I'm just going to go over a few things that I strategize when I do investments. Number one, always invest early. If you wait for a week before the roster update, you could still make some stubs, but you're not going to get the margins that you could be getting right now. For example, let's say I bought Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber is at quick sell right now. If I bought 100 of him and he went diamond, I'd be making 1800 in revenue a pop. If I were to buy him a week before the update and he was 2400, I would be making 600. So that's triple the stubs, going from 1800 to 600. Like, that is a big difference. So invest early, but don't be dumb, because when you invest early, there's a strategy that I do that minimizes your risk and your losses. But you can also really screw yourself up if you aren't careful and you don't buy the right players, really. Another thing that I am just going to mention is they're not going to just upgrade players to upgrade players. There are certain reasons why players don't go up or they do go up. So let me bring up Andres Jimenez for a perfect example. Andres Jimenez has insane fielding stats. 99 fielding, 95 reaction, 88 arm accuracy. He has good speed, and his hitting is atrocious, but he's still an 83. The way the overalls work, it's a system based on all the different attributes. So Andres Jimenez versus, let me bring up somebody who doesn't have good fielding. Let me go to second base. So Andres Jimenez is going to just naturally have a higher overall than a guy. God, these guys all have good fielding. Than a guy like Gleyber Torres. Gleyber Torres has putrid defense, 57 fielding, 35 arm, 59 reaction. Gleyber Torres is going to have a much worse chance. Just forget about the overalls right now. Gleyber Torres is going to be much harder to go diamond than a guy like Andres Jimenez because he already has better defense that's really carrying his overall. These are the things that you need to factor in when you're making investments. When Bo Bichette was when he was raking 2 years ago and he didn't make diamond until like October, it's because his defense was so bad and his hitting stats were already so high that they couldn't give him any more boosts and he didn't go diamond. These are little things that you need to look out for. That factors into another term that I like to use, and I call it room to grow. So let's bring up someone, for example. Let me find a good example. Let me show you guys a gold card. Let me just go with Kyle Schwarber. So Kyle Schwarber is a DH, and fielding probably doesn't factor into the overall system at all, maybe a little, but his hitting stats at 83 overall are already very good. He has 85 contact left, 97 power right, 109 power left, 113 discipline. This guy already has amazing offensive stats. That means he doesn't have much room to grow, meaning if they were going to increase his attributes, they would have to, he would have to be insane. He'd have to be hitting so much better than he is right now for him to continue to go up. If you have a guy like Jimenez that hits 300 versus righties and lefties and has an OPS of 1,000 versus lefties and righties, and you have the same for Schwarber's probably only going to go up in contact right, while Jimenez will go up in all four of those stats. That's why room to grow is so important, because sure, a guy could be playing really well, but his attributes might already be representing that, meaning that he won't go up. That's a big thing with these cards, is room to grow. So now I'm in my Excel book. I study finance in college. Like, this is where I live. I'm not like insane at Excel, but I have some good Excel skills that I've been learning, of course. But this Excel model is really helpful for me to track everything. It doesn't have to be this detailed like it is for me. It could be more detailed, but I just wanted to show you guys this. I'm not going to go to this investments tab because I don't want to just show off my investments in this video. I will eventually. But again, for the same reason, like, I don't want to show you guys players 3 days after the roster update and then they all suck for a week, I don't want to do that to you guys. But regardless, I'm on my W's page. My L's page is the same thing as this, but just the players that I lost stubs on. So I'm just going to walk you guys through my W's page. So first, in all the columns, we have first name, last name, overall, the new value, aka just what they got upgraded to, the future value. This, I just have the quick sell value. I have an awful formula. I should probably change this to a lookup formula, but I made this like 3 years ago. Regardless, these values take from the overall and the new value. So the present value is literally just the quick sell value of the card before the upgrade, and the new value is, or the future value is the same thing, but for after the upgrade. So Garrett Crochet, I bought him at an 83 overall. So when I bought him, his quick sell value was 1,200, and when I sold him when he made diamond, his quick sell value was 3,000. This is just how much I spent on buying the card. So I just do this on an average on all the times that I buy a card. If I only bought a card once, then I'll just do it like, let me pull it. Yeah, I'll just hard code 2,400. I only bought Hater once. If not, I'll just weigh it based on how many cards and how much I buy it, just to get an average and make it really accurate. But yeah, like, I on average bought 50 Garrett Crochets for 1982. This is just quantity. It's just how many I buy. Risk. This is the most important column in all honesty. So what I do for risk here, if we do the formula, so basically you're taking the quick sell value, you're subtracting how much you bought it for, times the quantity. So basically, let me explain this. Let's say I buy an 83 overall card. The quick sell value is 1200. Let's say I buy 50 of them for 1400. The 1400 stubs, the only stubs that I'm risking, 200, because you subtract 1200 from the 1400. Because worst case scenario, if the guy's going to go down, you just quick sell them before the roster update. So the risk is 200 stubs. If I were to buy a player for 1400 and then quick sell him a month later for 1200, I would have lost 200 stubs. You multiply that by the quantity, that's how much risk you have in a certain player, right? Yeah, so that's how I measure risk. It's basically how far away you're buying someone compared to the quick sell value. This risk column is probably the most important one. Risk is literally just how much stubs you could be losing on an investment. So let me go to one of my best investments, Max Fried. So I bought him when he was an 80 at 700 a pop, right? The risk was there because, you know, I'm risking 300 stubs per Max Fried that I bought, and I bought 100 of them, so it's like 30K roughly. He went up to an 82, 83 in the first update, so that alone canceled out my risk. And then I already made stubs, but then when he went diamond, I made 326%. I made 2,300 per Max Fried. The risk was there when I bought Max Fried. You know, I think of all these investments conceptually. I bought Max Fried and I thought, is it worth the risk? So a guy like Hunter Green, he had a lot of risk because he was really expensive early when I bought him at 80 overall, and he almost screwed me, but he ended up going diamond, so it was worth it. For example, this Nathan Eovaldi investment, this was probably my best investment of the year. When I bought Nathan Eovaldi, I bought him at 920. He was an 82 overall. His quick sell value was a 900. I was only risking 2,000 stubs. That's a no-brainer. You're risking 2,000 stubs to potentially make 300,000. You just have to think of these conceptually. Are you willing to do that? Of course you're willing to do that. Worst case scenario, you lose 2,000 stubs. That's nothing. Best case scenario, he goes diamond and you make 300K. You just have to think of the risk that you're willing to put up with the reward. And Nathan Eovaldi had pretty much no risk for a huge reward. It was the same thing with Hunter Brown. I bought him at 975, a little more, but only 7,500 compared to the 375 I made when he went to an 86. You just have to think of how much are you willing to risk. You know, the more expensive a card is, the more risk you take on. But, you know, obviously some cards might be more expensive because they have a better chance to go diamond. It's all just a conceptual thing that you have to get down. And if you use the room to grow thing that I talked about and like defense and all that stuff, you'll be able to nail this like I have over the years. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys are new here, follow me on all my social medias, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe on here on YouTube. So yeah, see you guys next one. Peace.